Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining what I believe is one of your favorite programs on Facebook. I'm referring to the Education USA Facebook Live. I want to thank you for joining today. And I mentioned Education USA. If this is the first time you are hearing about Education USA, we are a US Department of State sponsored network. We provide information and guidance to students who wish to pursue higher education in the US. In Ghana, we are present in 2 centers, and in other countries, we have about 170 countries where you can have Education USA centers. And globally, we have over 430 centers. Ghana, we have just 2, as I mentioned. We are in Accra at the US Embassy and Kumasi, based in ACE Consult in Asukwa. Today, we have a virtual pre-departure. I'll say thanks to COVID, because pre-departure has always been in person until COVID came, and now we have to manage to do it virtually. But pre-departure orientation is for admitted students going to pursue higher education at different institutions in the US. Today, we are hosting this pre-departure for graduate students, meaning students going for a master's program or a PhD program. Our students study at different schools in all 50 states in the United States. Pre-departure is an exciting time because you've done all the hard work and now you're beginning to rejoice, because 1, you've gotten an admission into a school that you liked, that you applied for, and 2, you are going to learn about the life of an international student in a US university campus. This afternoon, we have a whole package for you. We will start off with a presentation on preparing to go. Then we'll go into the nitty-gritties of cultural and social and academic issues that you should know and pay attention to. Then we also have 2 amazing students who will share their experiences with you. Feel free to ask them any question, except you don't ask them personal questions. But otherwise, yes, they are here to share a lot of their experiences with you. I will use this opportunity to say big thank you to Grace and Isaac. I will also say thank you to Professor Jokoto for joining us again. And our own Mrs. Owusu this afternoon, she's looking very amazing. Towards the end, we will have a cultural attaché to give some remarks and congratulate you all. Before we get into all of that, I want to say my own congratulations. I know it's not been an easy road, but here we are. We are full of smiles because we did the hard work. I'll turn over to Marilyn. I need you to please type in the chat box where you are joining from. And if you don't mind, tell us the school you are going to and the program. Who knows? There may be other people on this program who may be going to the same state or even the same school you are going to. So pre-departure is also a time to connect. Stay back, enjoy, and type your questions and your comments. We'll be reading all of them as we go through the program. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mrs. Owusu. You are looking smashy this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Afuti. And a big congratulations to all students who've gotten their schools and are getting ready to go to the USA. As Bernice said, we'll be talking about the things you should do before you get to the US. So I'll just go straight to the documents you need. There are some important documents you can't do without. And the first thing you should think of is your passport. And please go back and look at your passport and make sure that by the time you get to the US, the passport would be valid for at least 6 months. Otherwise, it won't help you. You won't be allowed to go through immigration. So please make sure that you check your passport and make sure the validity is very good. Then you need your visa because you can't enter the US without your visa. We are assuming most of you have gotten your visas. Some of you are yet to get it. So you need your passports, you need your visa, then you definitely need an air ticket. And for the air ticket, please make sure that it's taking you straight to your school. Otherwise, some schools will make arrangements for you to get close to an airport that is close to your school, where you can continue the journey with a bus or a train. But just make sure that your air ticket is going to take you where you want to get to. Then you need an I-20. And by now, you do have your I-20. Otherwise, you didn't have gotten your visa. So your I-20 is a document you need to hold before you even get to immigration. So please make sure you have your I-20. And if you got a J visa, then you are going to have the DS 2019 instead of the I-20. So please keep that in mind. And then you all paid your CVIS fee. Please make sure you have your receipt. So these 6 documents, please make sure you pack them right away and make sure that it's going into your hand luggage, not your main luggage. So these are the 6 documents you should keep in mind and keep at the moment very close to you. Then there are a few things you need to have as you plan to get to the US. Medical documents are critical. Academic documents are also very important. For medical documents, the US requires you all have a COVID vaccination. So they've stopped the COVID tests before you board a plane, but you need to be vaccinated, be fully vaccinated and have your certificate, not just saying you've been vaccinated, but you need to show your certificate before you board a plane here in Ghana. And when you get to immigration in the US, you need to prove it. So please make sure that your vaccination certificates are close to you and you can present it. And then prescriptions are very critical, especially if you are going to the US for the first time and you've never been to a pharmacy there. In Ghana, some medicines, you can just go and get them over the counter. But in the US, you can't get most medicines over the counter. So if you know you are on particular prescriptions, please make sure you have them handy. Then if you have any medical records or dental records, please keep them handy and close at hand so that when you get to the US, you know you've packed these things. Then academic documents, you're basically going to the US to go and study. So all the things you used for your interview, for your academic documents, you need them. And that is your transcripts. You need all your certificates. If you wrote any standardized tests, you need to make sure that you have those standardized tests with you and you have hard copies. So please keep these academic documents. Then for some of the courses you did, it would be good if you can have course descriptions for the courses you took, so that if you are taking a particular class and a professor wants to know your background, you would have that relevant information to tell that maybe I took Greek economics. This was the details of the particular Greek economics I took. It makes a whole world of a difference if you have those documents. And then as you plan, you should have a campus contact person. If you get to immigration and you need to contact somebody on campus, that contact information should be close to you so that you can easily get in touch with that person. If you go over, you're done with immigration and you need to contact somebody in school as to what to do next, you would need that information very critically. So please make sure that you have somebody's information or a contact person from campus that you can easily get in touch with. The next thing you need is to make sure that you put all arrangements together. And when we say arrangements, your travel arrangement is very critical from Ghana to the US and then to your university. This is important because sometimes you'd have to do transits from one state to another state, or after you've gotten to your port of entry, you may have to take a bus or something else. Make sure that you've done all arrangements here in Ghana before you get to the US. Because if you are just going to buy, say, your regular plane ticket from Ghana to the main port of entry, and you think you can buy an air ticket from the port of entry to where you are going, it's very possible. But the price you will pay might even be more than the ticket from Ghana to the US. So please make sure that all travel arrangements are set. Then all your housing arrangements should also be set. And this is critical because for graduate students, especially, most universities will require that you make your own housing arrangements. Very few universities will give you campus housing. So that if you are going to live off campus, please make sure that you finish all arrangements and you have documentation to show exactly where you are going to before you travel to the US. And then all financial documents, how you are going to pay your school fees. If you get all those documents close so that you can show them if you need to prove that at immigration. And then also for your own safety and for your own good, have all financial and banking documents close at hand. Then you need an emergency contact. Apart from the contacts on campus, if you have a relative in the US, if you have a friend in the US, somebody can easily contact should anything happen. It's important to have that information before you go. Once you are done with these things, the next thing you should think of is how you are going to pack your things. All airlines have baggage limits. Under normal circumstances, everybody's entitled to 2 bags and a carry-on. For the 2 bags, you can't exceed 23 kilos. So make sure that as you pack your things, you know how to pack your things well. And you can't go and beg at the airport that let me go with these things. You pay excess, you pay money for excess luggage. So please make sure that you pack your things and pack it within the allowance you are giving so that you don't need to pay extra money when you get there. Then for your carry-on, most airlines will not allow you to take liquids on your carry-on. And if you are taking liquids, it shouldn't be more than 100 ml. So please make sure that on your carry-on, you have basically everything you need and within the limit. We normally would advise that take an emergency set of things, clothing, sanitary things in your carry-on, so that if in case your baggage doesn't get to the US with you, at least you have something to use till you get your baggage. And sometimes any other thing you might need, all your documents for immigration should all be in your carry-on if you need them. So please keep these things in mind. If you need more information on the things you can carry, and there's a website shown here, you can go there and then check all these things. Then as you pack, check where you are going to, check the weather. Some places are very cold, some places are not cold. So please make sure that you get the things you need. If you are going to a cold place, you are better off getting, say, a jacket or warm clothing here in Ghana even before you go, so that you know how you can survive the few weeks as you try to find yourself. Then the things that will go into your packing, look at your clothing. Make sure you have some African clothing in there, because if it's International Day, you may want to wear your Ghana, something to represent Ghana. Any grooming items, electronics should go into your carry-on. Make sure you pack some food. And I'm saying food because you don't know If you've never traveled to the US, it's something I'd say pack, because for the first maybe 1 week, it will take you a while to get accustomed to the food there. So that if you have something that you can easily fall on to give you some comfort as you try to get settled is very important. Then know your departure schedule so that you can keep your schedule and know what to do at what time. And if you don't live in Accra, and you'll be coming from different regions of Ghana to get to the airport, please make sure you make all checks and know how to get to the airport so that you don't get stranded and you also don't miss the time to check in, because keep this in mind. When you get to Kotoka International Airport, you will need your passport, you will need your COVID test, you will need your air ticket, you will need the address where you are going to. All these things will be checked at the airport before you are allowed to board the plane. If you are traveling for the first time, the plane can get very cold. So please make sure that you have a jacket you are traveling with. If you'd have to do transits, just make sure, if you've not bought your ticket, make sure you have enough time to do a successful transit so that you don't miss the plane. But if you can't do anything about it, you can't do anything about it. But once you have control, please make sure that you give yourself enough time to be able to transit successfully. Then when you get to your destination, you'd have to go through immigration. So all the things I mentioned earlier, please make sure that you have them at hand, all in your carry-on, so that at the immigration, you can show all your documents. I recently went to the US, and one thing that surprised me, I just assumed that when I get to the immigration officer's desk, that's when he was going to ask for my COVID documents and everything. Little did I know that as we're queuing to go through immigration itself, would have an official come to ask us to show proof of COVID vaccination. So please get all these things close so that you can show them if you need to. And then once you get to immigration, all the documents you presented when you were going for your visa, it would be in your interest if you have them at hand so that you can show them to the immigration officer. And then happily, you can proceed to get to campus after you've gone through immigration. These are a few things I want us to look at. The moment you get to the US, it's in your own interest if you can report to the International Students Office, because that's where everything takes place. And they can help you understand everything before you even go to your dorm. If it's a weekday, if it's a weekend, then go straight to the campus arrangements you've made, especially if it's off. For graduate students especially, you'll be going off campus. So you may not necessarily go to the international office, but if it's necessary, it's one place you can't avoid. You need to make sure you will go there. Then all schools have students orientation. Make sure you don't miss any orientation. And during orientations, that's when you can get to know other African students and more so other Ghanaian students. And that's where the family bond starts, because even though you may be coming from different places in Ghana, it would be just a good way to bond with another Ghanaian student and feel that you have a family member there. And that makes your stay very comfortable. And get to know the school and community, move into your residence, know the program you are going to do, know how to do your registration, and more importantly, get your student ID and your student email, because in the US, most information will be shared through your emails. So please keep that in mind. Other things I want to share, but Dr. Jokoto is here to do those things for us. So I'd say that if you need to come back and watch the video to know all the other things you need, please do so. But at this point, I'll hand over to Dr. Jokoto so that she takes us through the different things we need to know as we get to the US. Let me stop sharing my screen. Okay.
Hello, everyone. So what I'm going to be talking about has to do with cultural differences, but because we're focusing today on the graduate student experience, there are a few things that I want to start with before I go into the cross-cultural experiences. So a lot of you who are going to graduate school either already have either have assistantships or maybe looking for assistantships or some kind of funding. And so there are a couple of things that I thought it would be really good to talk about. And also there are certain things that other graduate students have asked me to make sure that I talk about when I do these pre-departure orientations. So different types of assistantships exist. There are research assistants. Sometimes there can be residential assistants and then teaching assistants, all of which involve having a job on campus, which may or may not come with a tuition waiver and a stipend, which then helps fund your graduate education. Based on some experiences that other Ghanaian graduate students have had, they have asked me to remind you guys to remember that the fact that you have an assistantship, which kind of sorts out a lot of funding concerns, doesn't mean you should be complacent about money. For one thing, remember that when you work, you don't get paid on the first day, you get paid either on the last day of the month, or some schools will pay people every 2 weeks. So one of the things that will be really important for you guys to make sure of, if you don't know the answer to this already, is how often are you going to get paid? If you work in a campus where you are supposed to start, let's say on the 16th, and then you don't get paid until the 16th of the following month, you'll need to think about how you will be able to support yourself financially during that time. If you have a tuition waiver, that's not the issue. But I'm thinking about how are you going to be, like, what are you going to be eating for the month? These are kinds of things that you need to think about, because we've had some Ghanaian graduate students go with the assumption of, oh, yeah, I have a research assistantship, my financial stuff is sorted out. And then they get there and like, wait a minute, I don't get paid until the next month. I didn't have enough money on me for the first month. And so please factor that into your finances. There have actually been a couple of unfortunate situations where people did not get paid exactly a month after they started due to things like hurricanes and other natural disasters. And so they were a little bit more stressed than out than they should have been. So please really factor that in. If it means taking an additional olonko of Gary with you, do that, just so that you don't have a rocky beginning. A few other tips include things like a lot of programs are going to involve the use of software. I think COVID has shaped everybody's educational experience to have inclusion of different kinds of software in terms of how we do our schoolwork, how we submit assignments, and so on. But in graduate school, and also in the context of research or teaching assistantships, there may be new software that you will be expected to know how to use. And so please allow yourself, especially at the beginning, additional time to learn how to use any learning management systems or data analytic programs that might be required in your jobs. One thing that American universities are really good at is providing all sorts of orientation workshops. So a presenter before mentioned, don't skip orientation. I cannot stress how important that is. But in addition to international student orientation, also attend as many campus workshops that you can. There's lots of workshops that show things like the library, where the library is, how to use the resources, and so on. Graduate students in particular, but students in general, tend not to you attend these workshops and then don't know how to use some of the resources that the university provides. These are quick and easy ways to know what kinds of resources are there. So when you hear about an informational workshop about something to do with a university, if it's tied to education, I strongly recommend going. This also ties into certain things which are tied to graduate work. In graduate work, particularly in the humanities and social sciences, you're going to be doing a lot of writing, much more than you have done before. And this is something that, for example, I didn't know how to write a term paper when I got to graduate school. And then my first semester, each class had a term paper due, but I figured it out. So just open yourself up to new experiences, talk to librarians, talk to faculty, talk to your classmates when you don't know how to do something. Make sure that you can figure it out, and don't wait until the last minute to figure things out, okay? Another couple of things that people have said are important that I should talk about are things like for the graduate students, some of you may be grappling, if you're not going just by yourself, but you're going with kids or you're going with a spouse, you have other things to think about and negotiate that the typical undergraduate does not. And so these are important things to consider. And even though there will not be time for us to talk about these things, some of the cultural differences that I'm going to talk about are going to be relevant to raising kids and being with spouses in the United States. Lastly, teaching assistant specific. One of the things that you'll notice is that I'm currently talking with an American accent, partly. That was not how it was when I left Ghana. And one of the reasons why I started learning how to speak like this is because I was a teaching assistant. And one of the things that can happen when you are a teaching assistant, now there are different kinds of teaching assistantships. Some you just grade and lead discussion sections, but in some cases you might actually be responsible for teaching class content. And one of the problems that some American students can have sometimes is not understanding people who may speak differently. And so one of the recommendations is that anytime you're saying a word which people say is hard to understand, please write it on the board. You want to make sure that you can communicate clearly with your students so that if there are any problems in terms of their academic performance, they do not blame it on you in terms of, I couldn't understand anything she was saying and therefore I flunked my exam, which would totally not be the case, but some people have blamed their poor academic performance on instructor accents. So just make sure that you provide stuff in writing to people, write words which are pronounced differently on the board and stuff like that. Just make sure that you remove communication barriers as much as possible so that it is not a reason why people will not want to take your classes or blame poor performance on you. Okay, so these are a few things about graduate students that I thought it would be important to talk about. But now I'm going to talk about culture. So I like talking about this. I love doing this pre-departure orientation, partly because I'm a cultural psychologist by training. And so what I try to do is I try to understand culture and map out cultural differences. And so here, I'm going to be talking briefly about some of the things that I've noticed about cultural differences between the United States and Ghana, and how this will affect your transition as you transit to graduate school in the United States. Now, one of the things I want to make sure that you understand is that I'm talking in general terms. Of course, there are going to be individual differences. Not all Ghanaians are the same. Not all Americans are the same. Not everybody has the same personality. There are going to be gender differences. Part of the experiences will depend on whether you go to a university like Columbia, which is in a different part of the country than a university like where I went, Urbana-Champaign in Illinois, which is in a more rural environment, right? So they're going to be different experiences. If you go as a single person versus if you go with family and kids, all these things will determine your experiences. Your major may have something to do with it. what somebody with a degree in history experiences may be very different from what somebody in engineering experiences. So there may be some things which will not be the same, but I'm just talking about general terms, okay? So the first part of the cultural difference that I'm going to talk about is visible cultural differences. These ones are easy. We can notice them easily, but sometimes they can be exhausting to adjust to. Take, for example, the fact that in a regular American grocery store, this is what a milk aisle can look like. So everything you see in this picture is a different kind of milk. If you were going to the grocery store to buy milk, you'd have to decide which brand to buy, and then within the brand, which kind to buy. It can be overwhelming if you have 20 or 30 things on your list, and each of these things has to involve a decision like that. Welcome to the land of choice. In Ghana, things are relatively simple, even though we're getting bigger and bigger stores, but our brands are fewer. So for example, you can go to a coffee shop these days and say you want a cup of Milo. It will be 18 cedis. But if you went to Starbucks in the United States, you'd have to make a series of decisions in terms of buying a cup of coffee. You'd have to decide on the size of it, and there are 3 sizes, what kind of coffee you want in it, what kind of coffee, again, you want in it in terms of whether you want it decaf or caffeinated coffee, and then what kind of milk you want, what kind of extra shots you want, how many extra shots, whether you want it for here as an eat-in or to go, which is takeaway. And that's also an Americanism which you'll need to pick up, because they don't do eat and take away. It's for here or to go, for here or to go. And then do you want something with that? So ordering a cup of Milo in Ghana looks like this. Ordering a cup of coffee in the United States looks like that. Choices. This is from a menu at a place called Sweet Greens, where, similar to the cup of Milo, but a little bit more complex, ordering a salad involves choosing from the bases option, choosing 4 ingredients from the ingredients part, 1 premium addition from the set of options here, and then 1 kind of dressing, right? And so again, different options, lots of choices. But again, these are visible cultural differences. You will see them wherever you go. The food generally has more vegetables and larger portions. The country's generally more developed and has fewer potholes. You'll see that given the fact that it's a developed country, there just tend to be more resources. When you go shopping, you'll see a difference in the kinds of sizes, clothes and shoe sizes, and so on. And so just remember, when you buy something, to try it on. If you're used to European sizes or British sizes, American sizes are different. Weather may be different depending on which part of the country that you go. If you're admitted to a school in Florida, pretty similar in terms of temperature, but there may be hurricanes. If you're going to northern New York or something like that, then be prepared, or Chicago, be prepared for brutal winters. Units of measurement are not metric system. Currency is obviously different, right? But again, these are things you will notice immediately. These are visible cultural differences. You will eventually get used to them. Here are some stylistic things that may take a while to get used to. You are moving to a country where information is king. So remember, the instructions when you're traveling have lots of documentation on you. Why? Because people use this information in different ways, and people require information in different ways for different things. So at the airport, people will want to know why you're here. What evidence do you have to support why you're here? That is why it's important to have all the information on you, right? But it is also important to have information in your head as well. So you are coming from Ghana, going to another country. A lot of people may not have heard anything about Ghana. So be prepared to answer questions like, where is Ghana? And if you say it's in Africa, that's not good enough because people want to know where exactly it is. So do you know Ghana's longitude and latitude by any chance? Do you know Ghana's population by any chance? Do you know how big Ghana is in terms of size? Ghana is the size of Oregon, roughly, and has about the population of Texas, right? That's a good way to make Americans understand about Ghana, right? But be prepared to be a cultural ambassador when you go. Information-oriented culture. So there's always stuff like how big, how many, how hot, how cold, what direction. And don't be surprised if people ask you, how hot is Ghana? And they want to know the numbers. Like, what is the temperature of Ghana? You saying hot is not good enough. People are very interested in specifics, right? So learn statistics about Ghana. We do directions differently. Some of this is going to be helped by the fact that everybody uses GPS nowadays. But in Ghana, we tend to use landmarks for direction markers. So things like Blue Gate, you go to the junction, make a left when you see the mango, the mango tree, keep going straight and go straight and stuff like that. Just wanted to check. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
All right.
But your screen is off.
Yeah, now it is. I'm going back to sharing the screen because the internet was going in and out. So it suddenly said you couldn't see my screen anymore. Okay. So what I was saying was we do directions differently. We use landmarks. You're going to a place where they use compass points, right? So start getting used to north, south, east, west, and left and right. That's how directions are done. So think about that and try to orient yourself to that. Another very important thing is the notion of rules that in Ghana, more than in the US, we tend to think about rules as suggestions. Rules are not enforced very often, but you're going to a country where rules are taken seriously and enforced much more than they are in Ghana, right? So if in Ghana, for example, you can see a sign that clearly says, do not urinate here, and you'll see somebody urinating under the do not urinate sign, right? Things like that would get you arrested in the United States. So if it says, do not cross here, don't cross here. If you're driving and it says stop, as in a stop sign, come to a full stop before you start driving again, okay? Rules are not suggestions. Okay, one of the important dialogues in the United States right now is about diversity. There are other dialogues going on, but diversity is one of the important ones. And diversity has to do with the ways in which people are different. So things like race. And by the way, you guys are suddenly going to realize in a sense that you're Black, which you probably didn't know before because your identity is you're a person and you're Ghanaian and you belong to the groups that you go to, but you're going to switch to a place where the Blackness and the Africanness of you is going to become a salient part of your identity, whether you like it or not, because that is how people will see you and that can be how people relate to you. So it's important to be aware of that. Diversity also has to do with religion. You're going from a country which is pretty religious, like I would say about 75% of privately owned small businesses have religious connotations in the name or under the name. So, I know that my Redeemer liveth, Vulcanizer, and so on, apart from church names. But you're going to a country where some parts of the country may not have religious affiliations being so open. And so you're going to have to orient yourself to not assuming that everybody's religious, because that is not necessarily the case where you go. Another thing that will be different is that in Ghana, we have a very different outlook on sexuality and gender identity than the current discourse in the United States does. And so it's important to realize that you are going to somebody else's country where the views are different from the ones here. And it's important to be open to recognizing that those differences exist and not imposing your views on other people. Related to that, particularly for people who are teaching assistants, preferred pronouns is an important discussion now in universities. So if somebody's identifying as female, automatic pronouns are she, her, hers. And so you'll see this in a lot of signature lines of university personnel. People identifying as male will use he, him, his, but there are other people who may not want to be put into a box and will choose other preferred pronouns, they, them, theirs. This is important for teaching assistants in particular, because as you learn the names of your students, you are also expected to remember the pronouns of your students so that you do not offend somebody by calling them their wrong pronoun. And so just be sensitive to that, be aware of that, and just pay attention to this so that it doesn't create any issues for you down the line. Okay. So these are some of what I would call visible cultural differences. Now we're going to be talking about invisible cultural differences. One of them has to do with the relationship to time. So as Ghanaians, we're just not punctual, and that's just a fact. Like people can say, oh, I'll be there 3:34, as if a 60-minute block of time is no big deal. You're going to a country where a 60-minute block of time is a big deal. It is not a suggestion. It's not that fluid. And so it's important to take time seriously. You're moving from a culture where we do things whenever we do them, and what doesn't get done, to a place where time is viewed as a scarce commodity and needs to be taken seriously and used well, right? And so there's the notion of use your time wisely, manage your time, which will be very important for you as a graduate student, because on the one hand, you are a student, and on the other hand, you will also be working as hopefully an assistantship. So you'll need to have good time management skills. Most of you already have them, because you wouldn't have gotten into graduate programs if you did not know how to manage your time. It's just that adjusting to a new country and adjusting to a new job and adjusting to life in graduate school all together at the same time can be stressful. So please take time management seriously. Recognize that time is in fact a precious resource and that you will need to learn how to manage it well. In Ghana, we're used to doing things one at a time. So think about the way that we cook. You like the onions going first, then the pepper and the spices, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, right? And dumping everything into a pot and covering it like at the same time and covering it and then going and coming back would be unheard of, because in Ghana, we cook one thing at a time, right? But look at the Chinese, they do stir fry. They cut all their vegetables and cook them at the same time, different kind of food, right? So just think about the fact that you're moving from a culture where we do things sequentially to a culture where things are often done synchronously. Multiple things are done at the same time. You can have a lunch meeting where you'll be eating and meeting at the same time and not doing one and then doing the other. And for example, graduate seminars may say bring a brown bag lunch. So somebody will be giving a presentation and everybody will bring their lunch, which will be different. It's not like you're bringing your lunch to share, but everybody brings their own lunch, you're not eating, and the person's presenting. And that is considered normal because they want to have a presentation at lunchtime, so people bring their food and eat, right? You're moving to a country where things are done synchronously more than sequentially. All right, let's talk briefly about communication style. So I recently met a chief and was reminded of how Ghanaian communication styles sort of where they came from, how they're considered important. So think about the traditional, and first of all, I don't know how many of you have actually met chiefs, but like you don't talk directly to the chief. That's the role of the linguist. So you tell the linguist tells the chief responds to the linguist, then the linguist talks to you, right? So, and then also it's much more even complicated because even though you're not talking directly to the chief, there's also the notion that even in the indirect communication, there can be another level of an indirect communication through using of proverbs. So there is actually a Ghanaian proverb, an Ashanti proverb, which says, we speak to the wise in proverbs. So if somebody is wise, we don't tell them anything plainly. We use indirect language to communicate with them, okay? And that is what works for Ghanaian culture. Unfortunately, you're moving into a culture where direct communication is the norm. So when somebody says something, generally, that's what they mean. One of the areas where Ghanaians tend to have a lot of problems is when it comes to saying no. Ghanaians tend to have problems saying no because we are acculturated to not say no to people who are in positions of power over us. It is considered impolite. And so instead of saying, no, you can't do something, people will say yes and then not do the thing. If you do that for your assistantship, you will get into trouble. You may, if it's something very serious, you may even lose your job. Open communication is very important. And so one of the things you'll have to do is to train yourself to start engaging in clear communication. If you don't understand something, say so at the beginning. If you don't know how to do something, say so at the beginning. Doesn't mean that you can't learn how to do it, but if somebody expects you to do something, let's say I'm a professor, you're my TA, I'm like, go grade these papers, and you don't know how to grade them, I would like to know that immediately so I can give you some guidance and not know that 3 weeks afterwards when I'm waiting for you to have turned in the work and then you say, oh, actually, I didn't know how to do this. I didn't know how to go about it, right? Open communication is very, very important. Self-reliance and reciprocity are two cultural things that I want to talk about briefly. So in Ghana, we tend to rely a lot on other people. We solve problems by asking for advice. We go to our friends to go see us off to go buy something from the junction because it's a social thing to do. Why would you want to go alone and so on, right? So we are socialized to do things with other people. But you're going to a place where, one, the expectation is that, for example, if you're doing a PhD, you're writing the dissertation by yourself, right? You're engaging in intellectual labor by yourself, of course, with the assistance of your dissertation committee and so on. But the expectation is, in general, that you're doing a lot of things by yourself. You wrote the exams by yourself. You filled out your forms by yourself. You're going to be doing an assistantship by yourself. So there's an interesting balance of, well, when do you do things by yourself and when can you ask for help? You can ask for help anytime you don't know something, but you shouldn't expect people to do things for you. The idea is that any assistance that you get should help you do the thing yourself and not that somebody's doing the thing for you. This is particularly important when it comes to turning in work, because written papers and assignments, you are expected to do them yourself. You can ask for help, but at the end of the day, you are supposed to do those things yourself. Related to that, I remember once someone told me when I said I was coming to do this pre-orientation seminar, the person said, tell the students to not go borrowing stuff from American students. And I understood what she meant. It's not that you should never borrow something from an American student. It's just that we have different relationships with other people's property. And so let's say, for example, that you borrowed somebody else's book, right? The expectation is that you'd borrow the book, use it as soon as possible and give it back to the person, regardless of whether the person is going to use it or not, right? But in Ghana, when we tend to borrow, we sort of borrow with this loose end understanding of when we're going to give it back. That's not considered appropriate in the United States. So borrow sparingly, because the idea is if you need something that bad, you should probably get one for yourself. Books, by the way, can be borrowed from other libraries through interlibrary loan. So that's one way to reduce borrowing from other people if you cannot afford to buy a book yourself, for example. But that aside, there are differences in expectations of reciprocity when you look at Ghanaians and Americans and also people of other cultures in general. So for example, take Sweden Gate, which was on hot on Twitter about a month ago, where people were talking about Swedish culture being weird. And somebody wrote a book explaining that Swedish culture is different from a lot of other cultures because Swedes are independent. They don't like to ask favors of each other. They keep their problems to themselves and suffer in silence. And in Sweden, to ask for help or to even give it is a low-level social taboo. As you can see, Ghanaians would just not do well in Sweden because this is the opposite of Ghanaian culture. We ask favors of each other all the time. We ask for help all the time. People give help when they can, right? But in Sweden, debt of any kind, be it emotional or favor or cash, is to be avoided at all costs. Again, you're not moving to Sweden, but it's important to remember that our expectations of what we can ask other people for, what it is appropriate or reasonable to ask other people for, can be shaped by the culture in which we are shaped in. Right? So in one particular culture, if you have somebody you consider your friend, you could possibly ask them to borrow their car, but it depends on how good of a friendship it is. And how friendship is defined can be informed by the cultures that we're in, right? Speaking of which, don't confuse friendliness for friendship. The fact that somebody chats with you doesn't actually mean that they are trying to be best friends with you, because Ghanaians can confuse that with people who are making small talk, right? So the whole idea in Ghana tends to be that if you're conversing with somebody, then they're your friend. But in America, it can be that, but it can also be that people are just making small talk. So you can have a perfectly long conversation about the weather and the politics and, COVID or whatever, or climate change about somebody, which can last an hour, but the person may not recognize you the next day. And that can be normal because that was just somebody making small talk. So just be careful not to confuse friendliness and friendship. A few other things which are tied to reciprocity actually are things like if somebody invites you to dinner, take a gift with you. I would say an exception is repeated visits to a host family or something like that, but definitely take a gift with you the first time. If you're invited to a dinner party, an expectation, unless people explicitly say do not bring anything, the expectation is that you would bring something. Be on time. There's a Ghanaian who wrote a book about Ghanaian culture. And he said that Ghanaians are never on time to parties. Like if somebody invites you to dinner and says that dinner starts at 6, a Ghanaian would absolutely never go at 6 because it'll be like, why are you starving that you're going exactly when they say, you should come? But again, you're not traveling to Ghana, you're going to a different place where the expectation is actually that you will be on time and to be late is considered rude. Okay. So these are some of the invisible cultural differences. There are more of them, but this is a rush presentation. We don't have a lot of time. And so there's not enough time to go into those. I want to talk briefly about adjusting to a new culture and show you this curve. As you can see, it's up and down and up and down and up and down. And basically that's how a cultural adjustment happens. So there's going to be a honeymoon period where you're going to be so excited. You got your visa, you got your ticket, you dealt with all the crazy airport stuff. You are finally in the United States. The air is different. You're there. It's exciting. You love your campus. You're making new friends. It's beautiful, right? Honeymoon period. Classes start. It's fabulous. You love all your classes, blah, blah, blah. Just remember that you're not going to feel like that every single day. And as this graph suggests, your mood can be up and down, right? So sometimes you'll be happy, sometimes you'll be frustrated, sometimes you'll have issues adjusting. But just remember that acculturation is a process. You will not adjust in the same way. Different people adjust at different times. So if there's ever a time when you feel very frustrated and you can't really figure out why, it's sort of like you wake up and you're annoyed and you're just not feeling free. Sometimes it can simply be that you're having trouble adjusting. And ways to handle that are talk to friends, think about how you manage stress in general. And if you feel it's so bad that you can't get out of bed and go to class, then please consider making an appointment with your university's counseling center so that you don't have problems interfere with you being able to perform academically, because that's why you're going to the United States in the first place, right? So just remember that it's not a straight line. And so your mood and your experiences can go up and down. One thing that I do when I'm doing in-person presentations to illustrate how difficult cross-cultural transitions can be is comparing writing your name with your non-dominant hand with writing your name with your dominant hand. If you like, try it right now, take a pen, write your name. If you write it with the hand that you usually write with, you'll see it's no big deal. You've done it all the time. You know how to spell your name, no big deal. But now put the pen in your opposite hand and write your name, just your first name, with your non-dominant hand. Unless you are ambidextrous, you'll see that your name, which you've written all along, is much more difficult to write with your non-dominant hand. That is how things can be when you're adjusting to a new culture. You're doing exactly the same thing. It just feels at some point harder than it was at home. And it's a cultural transition. It will get easier. So some people talk about culture shock, and that is basically when you're experiencing a bump. Some of the experiences that some people can feel will be sadness, inability to concentrate, excessive needs for sleep, their productivity has gone down, feeling really homesick, right? So that's when you kind of know that if you're feeling these things and you feel them for a pretty long time, you might be experiencing culture shock. And that is when you hopefully can engage in coping skills to work through these things, okay? So these are just a few things. I'm going to wrap it up here, but these are just a few things that I wanted to bring to your attention. So let's do a recap. I have talked about things which are specific to graduate students. That's what we started with. Then I talked about some of the visible differences that you will encounter. But then I also talked about some of the invisible differences that you will encounter in your cross-cultural transition. And then finally, I talked a little bit about culture shock. Overall, visible differences are noticeable. They're easier to adapt to. It is the invisible differences that can be sources of stress for you and can also become sources of miscommunication or sometimes just frustration. So when you find yourself in a situation, allow yourself to reflect on this presentation and think about whether some of the stress that you're feeling may be due to invisible cultural differences, and then see if you can work through them. And so this is what I leave you with. And I wish you all the best as you get ready to prepare to cross the ocean and go make us all proud in your graduate program. Congratulations, everybody, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Prof. As always, you are amazing. I hope everyone can hear me. Okay. So right now, we will look at the last segment before we wrap up. We have 3 wonderful students. We had 2 at the beginning. We had a third one, Miss Amir. She's an intern, but a graduate student at Columbia University. So if they are all ready, we will have them share a few things with us. Amir is an American. So let me just have them show their faces and introduce themselves. Tell us about your name, tell us what you're studying and where you are now, and then we'll continue with the questions for you. Thank you. So we'll start with Grace.
Hi, everyone. My name is Grace Nakokoy Okang. I recently graduated from the University of Mississippi with a master's in history. I'm heading to Cornell for a doctorate in history. I'm happy to be here to share my experiences with you. Congratulations. And I hope we will be of help as you transition to start your graduate study.
Thank you. Thank you, Grace. I'll move to Isaac.
Hi, my name is Isaac Ofe. I'm currently studying civil engineering, PhD, at the University of Louisville. I'm in my second year right now. Thank you. I'm very happy to join this program.
Thank you, Isaac. Thank you. We're also happy to have you share. Hi, Amir.
Hello, my name is Amir Brandon Skinner. I am, like Ms. Bernice said, attending Columbia University in the city of New York, and I'm receiving a Master's of Science in Negotiation and Conflict Resolution. I'll be completing my second year in this upcoming academic year. So I'll be graduating in May of 2023.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll have you share a few of your experiences. So the first one was, what were your fears and how did you overcome them? This particularly will be for Grace and Isaac. When you left Ghana to the US, what were your fears, your expectations? If you had any fears, how did you overcome them? If you didn't have any fears, you were anxious, what were those about? And we have a few questions, so we'll quickly move through them so we can cover a lot. Thank you.
I think I'll go first. And so I did not have any fear. I was anxious about the airport situation because it was my first time flying out. And so very anxious about transitioning from an airport to the other, transit issues. And that was it for me. And I was also anxious about the new environment, the people I was going to meet, and the kind of graduate work that was ahead of me to accomplish.
Thank you.
Yes, Please, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I actually didn't have any fears. I was as anxious as maybe that of Grace we just spoke. I actually was thinking about how the pace would be. I actually got here during the pandemic, and I didn't know how to cope with um, this online education approach. I was used to the classroom work, and the pandemic, I was transitioning exactly into that which I had not done, I had no experience about, and I wanted to know how it was going to be.
Great. Thank you for sharing. I'm not surprised that you said you didn't have any fears. I'm sure the excitement was too big, and so that may have overcome any form of fear.
Yes.
But thank you. You were anxious, and I'm sure that's how a lot of current students are feeling. Dr. Jokoto has talked about culture shock and all that. Did you all experience anything like that? And then if you had any form of homesickness, how did culture shock play for you? And Amir, if you also experience any kind of culture shock, um, you will come in after Grace and Isaac.
Oh, my first one was that I was Black in America. I didn't realize that I was not just Ghanaian, but I was Black, and I had to not just being Black, but also African, because the African Americans will also distinguish you. Oh, she's from Africa. So it took a bit of time. And as Professor Jokoto mentioned, I had to be a cultural ambassador for my country, tell people where I'm from, get them to clear their mind about certain stereotypes. Someone asked me, do you have a dog? Have you seen a dog before? So those questions will come in as you get to study here. Another was with privacy. People are very private here about their lives, their religion, their political status, their relationships, family status, and a lot of things. And also when it comes to, as Prof. Jokoto mentions, with friendliness and friendships, you have to really know where your stance are with people in terms of relationship. Small talk is small talk, and that is it. You don't take someone's openness to you as friendship. Just know your boundaries, because people are very private. And another is religion. People aren't really open about their religion or sexual status. Some people are, some people are not. Don't go asking people, are you Christian? Are you Muslim? That will not help. You get to know about people as they go on. Another is food, and also ordering food. I still have an issue. I am giving myself the grace to learn how to order, because you can pick a lot of things in just one meal, and you might not even know the name of the meals, because America is very diverse. There's Mexican, Chinese, you find Mediterranean food here, and you might not have even heard of those foods. But so what I did to avoid that or cope with that was to Google the menu of some restaurants I'll be visiting before I arrive. So before I get there, I'm like, okay, I'm a pro here now. I'm ordering blah, 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 blah. And it really helped. Another was with mental health. I I tend to see that people take really serious, really serious about their mental health here. Depression is real, grad school is a lot of work. And so that's a few I'll share. And also I'll add that people are very assertive here in the classroom, outside the classroom. And we as Ghanaians come in, have a sort of a timid nature and respect for hierarchy. You wouldn't find it here. If someone wants you to address them, Miss, Mr., doctor, you know that if someone says, just call me by my first name, I'm Noel, I'm this, I'm that, you just do that, and then respect everyone, be open-minded, not judgmental about people's attitudes or the way they dress. Yeah.
Yeah, I would talk about time. We had this saying back in my undergraduate studies. We said, our professor said, like, work expands to fill time available. So sometimes a work that can be given us, they give us assignment and, oh, bring it next week, and we wait till maybe a day or two before the submission date, then we submit. If you do that here, you will lag behind, because here we do not procrastinate. When you are given any work, don't say that there's more time and you can just move around a little bit before you do the work. And it is very important. And as Grace said, the friendliness and friendship. When you meet people, they might smile at you and not do the small talks, as Professor said, and you don't have to mistake that for friendship. And in Ghana, we can just meet someone. How are you? How's you? Ask everything, almost the entire family. But here, you don't do that. And these are some of the things that you have to take note.
For me, I would say, to add on a little bit to what Grace and Isaac both hinted at, when thinking of time, Americans really are, the running kind of phrase that a lot of Americans use is that to be early is to be on time is to be late, and to be late is to not even show up at all. And they really do hold you to that when thinking of classes beginning, when thinking of going to potentially a professor's office hours, or if you get invited by a professor to a happy hour or something after. I would say always take that in mind. And even with American transit and things like that, depending on what city you're in, make sure to bring that or think about that in your mindset before you leave the house and before you even start getting ready for the event or the class that day. I will also say culturally, when thinking of happy hours and things like that within grad school, I would say about 50% of the work is in the classroom. And it seems like the other 50% is either in group projects, which potentially could be outside of class hours, and happy hours or events that professors and other professionals may invite you to. And I would say that is just as important as the part that you learn in the classroom. And then even thinking about the part where you're reading and things you're doing to prepare for the class. So I would say about 50% of the work is actually done within your graduate school classes. And also when thinking of the food as well, going back to what Grace mentioned earlier, depending on, again, what city you're in for your graduate school, the food, the world is your oyster when it comes to the food. You'd be surprised. It could be some small, we'll say, hole in the wall place, some place that a lot of people may not know about. But as soon as you find it, you'll gravitate towards it all the time. So try not to get too stuck in those comfort food zones or places that you find quickly that you love, because there's so much out there. So continue to just keep looking around, or if you pass a place on the street, just try it. Try something small to see if you like it. I know for me personally, I'm not for sure about you all, Grace and Isaac, but when it came to my first semester of graduate school, how was it for you all when it came to choosing your courses? Like, I know for me, it was definitely different from my undergraduate experience. Was it the same for you all?
Yeah. For the courses that I chose, I actually sat down with my advisor, and then we looked at those that would be relevant for my research. So that is what we did. So we had a plan and we executed that one.
For me, it was quite different because I'm studying history. So since I'm in the US, I had to do some historiographical courses in US history. And it was a lot, to be honest. It was really tough because I'm studying with people who are in PhD programs ready to write their dissertation. And here I am from Ghana doing really big stuff with them. It was difficult, but it was good, challenging, and it's made me break off from my old learning processes and learning style. I was very timid in class, so I became more assertive. I started talking in class, engaging, because it's part of your grade. You have to talk, you have to do that. And one thing Mr. Fay mentioned was about deadlines. You have to meet it. It shows your integrity and your will to be like a professional academic. It's tied to a lot of things, respecting time, deadlines, and so yeah. That was it for me.
Yes, I know for me personally, receiving my master's, going in, choosing the courses and things like that, it was interesting going in because it seemed like from the moment I kind of was accepted and the courses opened, I was expected to just dive right in and choose the courses. And I'm looking at names and descriptions, but it's kind of like I wish I had someone, there to be able to say, oh, take this course, don't take this course. And even with that, it was a lot of trial and error. So that first semester, I definitely had to show myself a little grace and see that, I might have forgot to read completely what days of the week the classes were. For me, I didn't think it was a thing to have weekend courses. But when thinking of a lot of my classmates, they may potentially be married or have children or have a lot of things going on during the week. So when I was choosing my courses and I saw something that said SA or SU, which meaning Saturday or Sunday, I just initially thought, oh, that's a typo. That can't be. And I still just went with choosing the courses. When the fall came, I had a rude awakening and I found out that SA and SU definitely meant weekends. It wasn't every weekend, but some weekends particularly. So that was definitely a learning curve I had to figure out and correct for the spring semester.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes. How was it for you all coping with the weather in your cities? I know I am originally from the Midwest in the US, so it was really cold and I'm used to the snow. I love the cold and the snow. But then for my undergraduate, I went to more of the heat in the South. So being back in New York, it's been interesting trading my Birkenstocks and flip-flops for winter coats again and Ugg boots and long johns. That's been it's definitely reminded me why I love the snow, but also why I left the snow.
Yeah, I'm heading to Cornell, so I feel like I'll be in that same situation really pretty soon. So for me with weather, I have an interesting story to tell. So got off the plane, got out of the airport. I'm like, what? I just run back in. I'm like, no, I'll stay inside till the driver gets here before I walk out with my luggage. So it was like really hard for me with the cold weather because I came in January and Mississippi is not very snowy, but it was snowing at that time. So it was really hard for me. But with time, I think I'm okay. And it's pretty really hot now. Like I didn't expect it to be very hot now in the summer because I was born in Ghana, used to the sun, but this is like extreme. Yeah.
I just want to come in a bit and ask you a question. Especially, in fact, it will also apply to your finances. Here in Ghana, we have our own budget. We have our own way of spending our money. And I'm sure you got to the US and realized some things were different. Can you share how you managed with finances when you got to campus? Grace, would you want to start?
Yeah, I will. With finances, it was pretty easy for me because like I love money, but I know how to spend it wisely. So, but it came really late. I learned my lessons because the SSN registration will come pretty later, like a month or maybe two. So you'll be paid later on. So you know how to get some money on you. I mean, 1 month, 2 months rent on you, some money for food and yeah, other basic personal stuff. Not I don't think at that point you would need so much for books. And so one thing that I have done that has helped me, while opening my account, I didn't just open a checking account, I opened a savings account. And so I had an automated amount of money sent to my savings monthly. I had a budget for food. I had a budget for my books that I needed to buy every semester. And one thing that I did not learn pretty early was that you'll be paying some students' fees, maybe $200 a semester. So you'd have to have that money too on you every semester. So that will come out from your saving. And it came as a big blessing to me because now moving to Cornell and I have to pay for shipping costs, I have to pay for rent. And so have a good saving culture as you come in. Don't spend all your money. Don't buy into the fast fashion economy in the US. Don't come spending and say you are here now. And so dollar, let me spend it. Have a very good budget friendly lifestyle.
Thank you. Amir, can you share your experience with this?
Yes, for me, budgeting was definitely something that was really a foreign term for me a little bit. Within my undergraduate studies, I was blessed to have a full ride. So thinking of, money, it was kind of everything I could focus it towards what I wanted it to. And for an 18 through 21-year-old, that's a beautiful thing to say. Getting to grad school, especially in New York City, it is one of the cities in the US that is very pricey, from tax to just normal things that you would do. Just about everything in New York costs besides walking on the street, like just about everything else. It pays to get in somewhere, pays to get what you want from it, it pays to sit there too long, like it just pays. It pays to even get there. But for me, budgeting, it really came down to me having to make a budget like per month. Because in the beginning, I would try to make one for the full semester, and I quickly saw that I was not in my budget every month. And then when I got to the last semester or the last month of my semester, I was trying to save pennies just so I could get home and be able to still buy Christmas gifts. And I knew I didn't want that to be repeated. So it was definitely a learning lesson, but budgeting per month really allows me to see what I'm spending my money on ahead of time, what I know I have the means for. So if I'm deciding, oh, I'm going to grocery shop, the first and third Sunday of the month, I'll cook so that I'm not going out. So if I'm not going out to eat, oh, maybe I can make a Broadway show, or maybe I can try to do something fun living in New York. So I do my best to still make sure I'm having a great experience, but it's definitely, budgeting is typically at the forefront of my head because well, I won't say we all know, but we all don't want to know how it feels to swipe a debit card and it decline, or, us to tap a phone and it not to work. So thank you for that question.
Thank you so much. Isaac, can you share your finance experience with us and how you're doing now?
Yeah, it was rough in the first month. I did budget. I did not actually budget well. I just looked at the apartment rate from Ghana, and then I just took that same money. But when I got here for the first month, I was told that no, you have to pay a security deposit, and I needed to give that one to them. So I had something small on me until my first paycheck arrived. So that few days, I couldn't find myself. I found myself in a difficult position. But going forward, I've been cooking a lot myself. I don't buy from the outside. that is something that has really helped me. I don't spend a lot on food from the outside, and it helps. It helps you to be within budget. Yes.
Wow, there's always so much to share. I'm so sorry I got kicked off a bit, but I'm back. Thank you all for keeping the conversation going whilst I try to find my way back. I think our panelists have been amazing. They've shared a lot. Pre-departure is always exciting. We can stay here another day and just share and share and share. Thankfully, we have this video on our Facebook page. You can watch over and over again. Some people have put information on which schools they'll be going to. You can look at that and connect with them. We also have emails on there. So if it's not there, we will post it before we leave here today. For those who are asking questions about dates and those who want to know how to apply and also get to this point, and those who have all kinds of questions, please feel free to reach out to us in Accra or in Kumasi, and we'll be more than happy to share with you. At this time, we'll be wrapping up, and we have our cultural attaché, my very lovely and powerful supervisor. Miss Lannis Brooker is here. She will give us the closing remarks. Lannis, thank you so much for joining us.
You are too kind, Bernice. Thank you for having me at this wonderful event. I want to first say congratulations on behalf of the U.S. Embassy and on behalf of the Education USA team to those who have been admitted to graduate schools. It's very exciting to think ahead to the prospect and the amazing opportunity that's been presented to you. Regardless of where you go to school, this is a fantastic opportunity to grow yourself and to think about the future. And we are excited to be part of that journey. We hope that when you are continuing through the process, you will keep us in mind. Remember the incredible resource that you have in the Education USA education advisors, Bernice and Rafiatu, Marilyn, Margaret, their teams. But also when you return from your studies, that you will seek us out, that you will be part of the panels like Grace and the other panelists, that you will share your experiences, that you will share with others the experiences that you've had and encourage them to study in the United States as well. We really appreciate those organic relationships that come out of this. And we want to make sure that those that really are the most important continue. We also want to remind you that you're going to be ambassadors and you will be representing Ghana. And you're going to be part of that cultural exchange, that people-to-people exchange, where you will be telling Americans all about your culture, your heritage, and you're going to be asking, them about their food and all those things. We always ask you, what's the first food you need to try, American food, and tell them about yours. Take advantage of those opportunities and invite the Americans to come back here and experience all that Ghana has to offer. We have a wonderful bilateral relationship, and all of you are a part of that. So we congratulate you to get to this far in the process, and we want to continue to engage with you. And we hope that once you return, you won't forget us and you won't forget your fellow prospective students. So with that, I will pass it back to Bernice and say thank you once again, and we look forward to the next session.
Lannis, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We also want to thank our panelists, our able panelists, Ms. Brandon Skinner, Ms. Okine, and Mr. Ofei, or Master Ofei. Thank you all very much. Again, congratulations to all our admitted students. Thank you, Mrs. Owusu. Thank you, Professor Jokoto. As I said, if you have follow-on questions, email us in Accra or Kumasi. We'll be more than happy to take you through the remaining steps. Until 2 weeks' time, we'll be back with another Facebook Live program Stay tuned and stay blessed. Thank you. Good night.